Hello, we're going to try this again. I've tried it a couple of times, had some mechanical difficulties, which is why I wasn't on Sunday too. My technical difficulties were starting then. But I'm back today. Now, what we're going to talk about today is loving your neighbor. We're going to find out how you love your neighbor and who that neighbor is. Now, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to Leviticus 19:18. Okay, in Leviticus 19:18, it says, "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." So right there, first off the bat, it tells us we're supposed to love our neighbors the same way we love ourselves. That's a very high standard considering how some people love themselves. Now, the next part we're going to read is in Matthew 22:37 through 40. Okay, in Matthew 22:37 through 40, it reads, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." And we know that's a biggie. That's the one where we're not supposed to have any other gods and all that kind of stuff. Just Him. We're supposed to love Him completely. Now, what does it say about loving the other people? And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So apparently, it's a pretty big deal to love your neighbors as well as God. In fact, he even said that the second commandment is like the first commandment. Yeah, it's almost as important as what the first one is, and that's the real big one. So loving people comes right directly under loving God. So that gives us an idea of just how important loving your neighbor is. And he even told us that the laws depend on that law, on that commandment. All the law hinges on that commandment. Yeah, it's like saying, well, I don't even know what we would associate with in human terms because we're very no tolerant for crimes, according to Jesus. But basically, he's saying, well, it's like our Constitution is what we put him in mind of. Most of our Constitution stems on a couple of amendments. One article is the freedom of speech. That's one of our big things. Almost everything stems on freedom of speech. The right, the search and seizure law, the Fourth Amendment, I believe it is, stems on them not being able to just walk into your house and search your house, or walk into your car and search your car. It hinges on that law hinges on the Constitution. That's what the whole thing hinges on, is those two things, pretty much. Well, that's the same thing there. The two commandments that he gives us, that's like our Constitution with God. The law hinges on those two commandments. If you don't have those two commandments, the law falls apart. And that's what he's telling us. Now, you expect that with the one that tells you you're supposed to love God, but he's even saying that the one where you're supposed to love people is the same thing. Now, he also tells us, he tells us. Now, the next thing we're going to read is Matthew 25:40. Okay, in Matthew 25:40, the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers and my sisters of mine, you did for me. Now that gives us another aspect of loving your neighbor. When you love your neighbor, when you love the least person that you can love, that's not just for that purpose, that person. It's not just loving that person. You're showing your love for Jesus at that point, because He said, "Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me." So if you love the least of them, you love Him. Now that does make an interesting question. If you don't love the least of them, if you don't love the friendless, if you don't love your neighbor, do you love Jesus? I know that's a question a lot of us probably ain't going to answer. Maybe at the end of this morning, you'll be able to answer that a little bit better. Now, I know it's hard to love a lot of people. I mean, it's easy to love someone who's sitting in church beside you. That's easy. They're a relatively good person like you are. So it's pretty easy to love them. But to walk into the bar and love the drunk that's sitting on the stool there, the mean, nasty drunk that no one wants to be around, that takes a lot of love. And Jesus knew this, and He answered this. He answered what you do with the mean drunks and the ones that treat you like dirt and everything. So He spoke about that in Matthew 5:43 and 47. So I'm having a little trouble finding my place here. I say was Matthew 5. I say 43 and 40 to 47. Okay, we're just going to start with 42. Actually, 41. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Or not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only the people that are your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So that tells us what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to look at, well, yeah, I can love this person over here that we're all good to love, but that guy there, no, I can't love him. No, that's not what it's telling you. It's telling us we're supposed to love the ones that persecute us. We're supposed to love the ones that hate us. We're supposed to love our enemies. Because you know what? Those people that persecute us, the people that make fun of us because we're Christian, the people who would cheat us out of money, all those kind of people are the ones that need our love and need our prayers. You know, I'm not saying you walk up and let a person punch you in the face. No. You know, you might want to keep your distance from some people, not because you don't love them, but because you love yourself too and you don't want to hurt, you know. But that doesn't change how you act to them. You know, you don't stop loving them just because you don't like them. You ever hear tell people sometimes in marriage they'll say, "Well, I like him, but I don't love him." Well, it's kind of what we are with people like that. We don't necessarily like them, but we love them because we have to love them. God said so. Because he said in there, it's easy to love the ones that treat us good. You know, the one with the kind word for you, the one that's going to give you a ride, the one that's not going to punch you in the face. Easy to love people like that. But the hard ones to love, they're the ones where the reward comes from. And I'm not talking you're going to get money because you love somebody. Not that kind of reward. The reward you get inside when you know you've done good, when you know you've done God's word. That you're not going to get that reward because you love somebody that's sitting in church because you haven't really done anything. Anyone can love the guy sitting in the church pew. They're good people like you are, or like we hope you are. And they're the people who need our prayers the most of all of them. Now that we know how important to God it is to love our neighbor, let's see how you love them. First off, we read the First off, we read that you love them as yourself. It's explained best in Romans 13:9 and 10. Okay, Romans 13:9 and 10. Okay. Okay, in Romans 13:9 and 10, it says, first off, it says, the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be, are summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Now, that's the second time that we've read that the law depends on loving your neighbor. That's the second time. And that is how he wants you to love. He wants you to love the same way you love yourself. You're not going to do harm to yourself if you love yourself. Well, you're not going to do harm to your neighbor if you love them either. And that's what is expected of us. Now we read Matthew 5:41-42. Okay, Matthew 5:41. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Now, I think we already covered that once, but we're going to go over it again. We want to know how we're supposed to love. That's how we're supposed to love. We're supposed to do above and beyond. We're supposed to help when we're asked to, even more than is asked. If a person wants you to go a mile, you go 2 miles. If a person wants your shirt, you give them your coat too. If they're cold, you take care of them. Now here's we read in Zacharias 8:17. We're going to read more how you're supposed to love people. Okay, 8:17. In 8:17 it says, "Do not plot evil against each other, and do not love to swear falsely. I hate all of this, declares the Lord." Now, what that's doing is satisfying one more question. How are we supposed to love them? Are we supposed to just love them in action and go about our business? No, that's not what we're supposed to do. He doesn't expect you to talk nice to them, And then as they walk away, you wish they get hit by a train. He doesn't want you to talk nice to them and then badmouth them behind their back. He doesn't want you to talk nice to them and then start rumors about them behind their back. He doesn't want you to talk nice to them and then judge them behind their back. You're supposed to love them not only in the physical, not only when they're facing you, but you're supposed to love them in your thoughts. You're not supposed to think evil of them. If they're bad enough you're going to think evil of them, that's when you need to sit and pray for them. Because if they're like that, they need prayer. And a lot of times, that's all it is that they need, is just a little prayer. Or maybe a kind word. And then they aren't as evil. Sometimes you find out that the people you're loving, that you don't really want to love, are actually good people. You just don't always get to see that side because you need to see the side that's not good so you know to pray for them. Now we see how to love our neighbor. Now the question is, who is our neighbor? To start that one off, we're going to read Leviticus 19, 9 and 10. Okay. It says here, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the cleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time, or pick up the grapes that fallen on the ground. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. So there it's telling us that our neighbor is the poor and the foreigner. And that passage is telling us that. Now the foreigner isn't somebody that lives next door to you because they wouldn't be a foreigner then. But it says you're supposed to be kind to them. You're supposed to leave food for them. You're supposed to leave food for the poor. You're not supposed to gather up everything. You're blessed, and whatever's left over is a blessing to another person. And that's who you're supposed to love. That's who's your neighbor. So when you start wondering who your neighbor is, we revert back to that. The foreigner and the poor person. They're my neighbors. I'm supposed to take care of them. We'll get a closer look at this in Luke 10, 29 through 37. Okay, they asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? It's the same question we were just asking. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. The priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too the Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, who at that time a lot of people, especially Jews, didn't like the Samaritans. I don't recall why, but they were kind of an outcast. So the Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him, and he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to the inn and took care of him. The next day he took out to 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Now, which of these three do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law that was there said, well, the one who showed mercy on him. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. Okay, so he's telling us that the Samaritan that no one likes is the neighbor. He's the one to help the person. He's telling us that person you see in the ditch is your neighbor. Now, that's going to tell me that the person you see in a broke down car is your neighbor. Basically, we're supposed to go through life thinking of everybody as our neighbor. We're just supposed to love. If you do that, you'll love your neighbor and you'll love everybody else too. And Jesus told us right there, go and do likewise. He don't expect us to just do lip service and say, oh yeah, I love the person, but yeah, I can't do this, I can't do that. No, he's telling them to do the same thing that Samaritan did. The same thing the expert in the law said that was done right. And that was a Samaritan helping the man. We're supposed to do that. He says to go and do likewise. Okay. All right, now we're going to read Galatians 5:14. Okay, in Galatians 5:14 says, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. Again, it's telling us that the law hangs on that commandment. Now that's what, about 3 verses we've read that tells us that the law is dependent on that one commandment. So it sounds like it's a pretty big deal. Now we're to the end, and I ask you again, do you love your neighbor? You might not want to answer that question yet until you mull over just what it says in here is your neighbor. Your neighbor isn't dependent on who you love, it's dependent on who you run into. If you love everybody, you'll love your neighbor. So you gotta think, and I gotta think the same thing because I'm not always good at loving my neighbor. So you gotta think, or are you loving your neighbor, or are you not loving your neighbor? I'll give you a good example of loving your neighbor. 2 good examples, the first-hand examples. One, here recently I ran into some troubles because of my health and lost my job. I have a friend that the first thing they did when I lost my job is brought me food. Plenty enough food to hold me over until I started getting some benefits from the state to help me out because of my health. That is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look for people who need help. We're supposed to show them love. That person showed me great love when they brought the food to me, and I was very happy when they did. Another situation happened recently, last Sunday, in fact. On my way to church with a friend, and we see police cars blow by us at a high rate of speed. So we knew it was something important. They had their lights going and everything, so something bad. We never did find out what. Well, my friend, she was driving. She started praying. She didn't know those people, but she was praying for the ones that the police was going to see. She was praying for the police that they would be safe, and anyone else that she could think of that could possibly be involved in with it. I never one time I grew up in church, never thought to pray for someone when you see an ambulance or police car or something go by. Never thought to do that. But that's how much love there is there. That person just loves everybody. So when she saw that there might be someone needed, she started praying. And I admired her for that. And I also learned a little bit from it too. So ask yourself again, do you love your neighbor? Or could you love him more? Do you pray when the police car goes by? I didn't until then because I never thought about it. And she said she picked it off with someone else. And that's the thing. You show love and do what you're supposed to do. Someone else will see it and they'll pick it up. Before you know, we might have a lot of love in this world. And Lord knows we need it. So think that over and think whether you can answer yes or no. If you want to put a comment on my on the video, feel free. Tell us about a time when someone loved you when you didn't think you was lovable, or sometime when you loved somebody that wasn't necessarily a neighbor. We'd love to hear the stories. We'd love to hear how you do it. Leave a comment down there and tell us. We'll be happy to hear it. Until then, God bless you all.